In a stunning turn of events, Jacob's loyalty is tested when his wealthy best friend Ben pretends to lose everything. What starts as a seemingly innocent test of friendship spirals into an emotional roller coaster that neither of them saw coming. As secrets are revealed, Jacob's response shocks Ben, leaving both men questioning the very foundation of their relationship. The story builds to a suspenseful climax, where forgiveness and betrayal hang in the balance. Will their bond survive the ultimate test, or is this the end of their friendship? Stay tuned to find out. But before we dive in, let us know where you are watching from today. And if Ben and Jacob's story speaks to you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Jacob Walters, a wealthy entrepreneur known for his sharp business acumen, sat in his opulent living room overlooking the city skyline. His luxurious penthouse boasted floor-to-ceiling windows, marble floors, and custom-designed furniture. Everything screamed success. But despite his vast fortune, there was one nagging doubt that wouldn't leave his mind. Was his closest friend, Ben, loyal to him because of who he was or because of what he had? Ben had been Jacob's friend since their days growing up in a small town. While Jacob had climbed the ladder to wealth, Ben's life had taken a different turn. He worked a modest job, struggling to make ends meet, yet their bond had never wavered, or so Jacob thought. Now, the question of loyalty gnawed at him. One evening, Jacob made a decision. He would test Ben's loyalty by pretending to lose everything. He would tell him he was broke, homeless even, to see if Ben would stand by him. It was a risky, somewhat cruel test, but Jacob needed to know the truth. As he crafted his plan, Jacob couldn't help but wonder if he was being paranoid. Ben had never shown any signs of disloyalty. But in the world of wealth and power, trust was a rare commodity. And so, Jacob set his scheme in motion, preparing to strip away his riches to reveal the truth about his friend. The next day, he would begin the act that would change their friendship forever. Little did he know, the outcome would be far from what he expected. The following afternoon, Jacob invited Ben over to his penthouse. Ben arrived, looking as cheerful as ever. He didn't live in luxury, but he was content with his simple life. That was one of the things Jacob had always admired about him. His ability to find happiness in the little things. As they sat on the leather couch, Jacob fidgeted nervously. He hadn't told anyone about his plan. This was a secret between himself and his conscience. Ben, Jacob began, his voice sounding more serious than usual, I need to tell you something. Ben looked at him with concern, setting his coffee cup down. What's going on, Jake? You look like you've seen a ghost. Jacob took a deep breath and began his lie. I've lost everything. Bad investments, a market crash. It's all gone, Ben. The penthouse, the cars, my businesses. I'm broke. For a moment, there was silence. Ben's face shifted from shock to concern. He didn't ask for details or express disbelief. Instead, he did something that caught Jacob off guard. He moved closer, placing a hand on Jacob's shoulder. I'm so sorry to hear that, Ben said softly. But listen, you'll get back on your feet. You always do. You're the smartest guy I know. Jacob expected a different reaction. Maybe panic or even pity, but not this calm assurance. He continued, keeping his voice steady, It's worse than that. I don't have a place to stay. I've been living here, but I have to leave soon. I don't know where I'll go. Ben frowned, then straightened up with a sense of determination. You can stay with me. It's not much, but it's a roof over your head. We'll figure it out. Jacob stared at him, speechless. Was Ben serious? Was he really offering to share his small apartment with a man who had just claimed to lose millions? Jacob reluctantly accepted Ben's offer. Though he still had all the comforts of his penthouse for a few more days, he decided to move into Ben's small, one-bedroom apartment to keep up the charade. Ben helped Jacob carry his belongings, which were little more than a few suitcases Jacob had hastily packed to make the story believable. As they walked into Ben's humble home, Jacob couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. The place was modest, worn furniture, cracked tiles, and a small TV that had seen better days. Sorry it's not the Ritz, Ben joked, tossing his keys onto the counter. But it's home. Jacob smiled weakly. It's fine, Ben. Really, thanks for letting me stay. That night, as Jacob lay on the uncomfortable sofa, he couldn't stop thinking about how Ben had reacted. He had taken him in without a second thought. There was no hesitation, no questions about when he would get his money back. Nothing but pure, unselfish friendship. For the first time, Jacob began to wonder if this test was unnecessary. But he was committed now, and there was no turning back. The real test would come in the days ahead. Jacob spent the next few days living in Ben's apartment, continuing the charade. He pretended to search for jobs, applying for low-paying positions that seemed beneath him, all while observing Ben closely. The strain of having a guest soon became apparent. Ben didn't make much money, and now with Jacob living there, expenses were rising. Jacob noticed Ben cutting back on his already modest meals and foregoing small luxuries like going out for coffee. "Hey, Jake," Ben said one evening, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. "I know things are tough right now, but I was wondering if you could chip in for groceries this week. It's getting a little tight with both of us." Jacob, still playing the role of the broke man, shook his head. "I'm sorry, Ben. I don't have any money right now. I'm trying, but nothing's coming through." Ben nodded, looking uncomfortable but never pushing Jacob further. Instead, he tightened his belt even more, cutting down on his expenses to make sure Jacob could still eat. It was at that moment Jacob began to question the fairness of his test. Was it right to burden his friend this way, to take advantage of his kindness, just to see how far it would go? After weeks of living with Ben, Jacob noticed something strange. While Ben had initially seemed to be struggling, he never once complained. In fact, Ben continued to share what little he had, offering Jacob not only food and shelter but friendship and support. Then one day, something unexpected happened. Jacob received a phone call from his financial advisor. The voice on the other end of the line sounded urgent. "Jacob, we need to talk," the advisor said. "There's been a mistake. The investments you thought were lost. They're actually safe. You haven't lost a dime. In fact, your portfolio is performing better than ever." Jacob sat in stunned silence. The entire premise of his test had just been invalidated. He was still a wealthy man, and now, after putting Ben through weeks of hardship, the truth was out. But how would he reveal it? Would Ben feel betrayed by the test? The revelation left Jacob with a new dilemma. Should he confess to Ben and face the consequences, or should he end the charade and disappear from Ben's life, sparing his friend the truth? The choice weighed heavily on Jacob's mind as he prepared to make one of the most difficult decisions of his life. Unable to bear the weight of the secret any longer, Jacob decided to come clean. He sat Ben down one evening, nervously running his hands through his hair. "Ben, there's something I need to tell you," Jacob began, his voice trembling slightly. "This whole time, I haven't really been broke. I lied to you." Ben's expression didn't change. He listened quietly as Jacob continued. "I still have my money, the penthouse, everything. I wanted to test you. I wanted to see if you would still stand by me if I had nothing." For a moment, Ben said nothing. His face was unreadable. The silence stretched, thick with tension, until finally, Ben spoke. "Jake, I don't know whether to be angry or disappointed," he said slowly. "You tested me? Like some kind of experiment." Jacob winced. Hearing it out loud made it sound worse than he had expected. "I know it sounds bad, but I had to know if our friendship was real. I've seen too many people change when money's involved." Ben shook his head, his eyes narrowing. "Jake, I didn't care about your money. I never did. I cared about you as a person, as my friend. That's why I stood by you." Jacob's heart sank. He had been so focused on testing Ben's loyalty that he hadn't considered the impact of his deception. The air in the room felt heavy as Ben stood up, pacing around the small apartment. Jacob remained seated, unsure of what to say next. "I don't know what to say, Ben," Jacob mumbled, looking down at the floor. "I'm sorry. I just needed to be sure." Ben stopped pacing and turned to face him. "Jake, friendship isn't something you test. It's something you trust. If you didn't trust me from the start, what kind of friendship did we have?" The question cut deep, and Jacob knew he had no easy answer. He had been so wrapped up in his own fears that he had forgotten the foundation of their relationship, trust. "I messed up," Jacob admitted, his voice thick with regret. "I see that now. But I want to make things right. Can you forgive me?" Ben looked at him for a long moment before letting out a deep sigh. "It's not that simple, Jake. You put me through hell, and for what? To see if I would stick around? That's not how real friends treat each other. Jacob felt the weight of his actions crashing down on him. I know. I was selfish. I thought I could find out who truly cared for me by pushing you away. It was wrong. But I promise I'll make it up to you. I'll be there for you no matter what. Ben's expression softened slightly, but he remained guarded. You really think you can just walk back in and pretend everything is fine? It doesn't work like that. Trust takes time to rebuild, Jake. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, Jacob said, desperation creeping into his voice. I'll prove to you that I'm serious about this friendship. I never meant to hurt you. Please, just give me a chance. Ben hesitated, the pain of betrayal still fresh in his heart. But deep down, he knew that Jacob's apology was genuine. You know what? Maybe we can start with small steps. I don't want to throw away what we had, but it's going to take time to heal. Jacob nodded vigorously, relief washing over him. I'll do whatever you need. I'll start by being honest, no more tests. I promise. With a tentative truce established, Jacob and Ben began the slow process of rebuilding their friendship. They started with simple outings, grab a coffee, watch a game, or even go hiking in the nearby hills. Each outing was a mix of awkwardness and nostalgia, filled with moments where silence hung in the air, but they were together, and that was a start. One afternoon, while sitting in their favorite cafe, Jacob turned to Ben. Remember the time we got caught in that rainstorm during our road trip? Ben chuckled, the memory warming his heart. Yeah, we were soaked, and you insisted we could outrun the rain, right? And you were furious because we ended up stuck under that awning for an hour. But it was one of the best days of my life, Jacob said, a smile stretching across his face. Ben felt a flicker of hope as laughter bubbled between them, filling the void that had grown from their conflict. But as much as he wanted to forget the hurt, the memory of Jacob's betrayal lingered, a quiet shadow in the background. I just hope we can keep this going, Ben finally said, his tone shifting to seriousness. I don't want to be blindsided again. I understand, I really do. And I'll be careful, Jacob replied, sincerity in his eyes. I value our friendship too much to let anything come between us again. As the weeks passed, Jacob made a concerted effort to be the friend Ben needed. He reached out to him more often, checking in during busy weeks and offering to help with small tasks that showed he was committed to making amends. But just as they began to find their rhythm, a challenge emerged that would put Jacob's newfound commitment to the test. Ben received a job offer in another city, a significant promotion that would change his life. But it also meant leaving the town they had both called home for years. Wow, that's amazing, Ben. You've worked so hard for this, Jacob said, trying to mask his apprehension. The thought of losing Ben to a new city felt like another betrayal, but he forced a smile. Thanks, man. But it's a big move, and I'm not sure how I feel about leaving everything behind, Ben admitted, uncertainty creasing his brow. Why don't you think it over? We can weigh the pros and cons together, Jacob suggested, secretly hoping Ben would decide against it. But as days passed and Ben considered his options, Jacob's anxiety grew. The fear of losing his best friend loomed larger than before. He needed to be supportive, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that this opportunity would change everything. To celebrate Ben's potential new beginning, Jacob organized a farewell party, inviting their closest friends and family. It was a bittersweet affair, filled with laughter and reminiscing but tinged with the sadness of impending separation. As the night unfolded, Jacob watched Ben interact with their friends, who praised his talents and achievements. He realized just how much Ben had impacted everyone around him, and it struck Jacob that his friend truly deserved this opportunity. Hey man, Jacob said, pulling Ben aside for a moment. I want you to know how proud I am of you. You deserve this. Thanks, Jake. That means a lot coming from you, Ben replied, his expression sincere. Jacob cleared his throat, deciding it was time to be honest. I know I've been selfish about this move. It's hard for me to think about you leaving, but I want what's best for you. Ben smiled, a mixture of gratitude and sadness in his eyes. I appreciate that, but I need to do this for myself. It's a chance for growth. As the party wound down, the conversation turned serious. Ben had received numerous well wishes and expressions of support, yet a part of him hesitated. He looked around at his friends, his home, and at Jacob, who had fought so hard to mend their friendship. Jacob, can we talk for a second? Ben asked, motioning him to the balcony. The cool night air wrapped around them, adding to the tension in the atmosphere. Sure, Jacob replied, heart racing. What's on your mind? I need to decide soon about this job. It's an incredible opportunity, but it would mean starting over again. I don't want to lose you, Jake, Ben admitted, vulnerability evident in his voice. Honestly, I don't want you to feel trapped because of me, Jacob said, his heart heavy. I support you, no matter where you go. Just know that I'll miss you. Ben took a deep breath, realizing how hard this decision truly was. If I stay, I'll miss out on something that could be life-changing, but if I go, well, I might lose my best friend. The following days were fraught with tension as Ben weighed his options. He visited potential new homes, explored job prospects, and contemplated what life would look like in another city. Each step he took felt monumental, yet Jacob's presence reminded him of the roots he had established. One afternoon, while hiking their favorite trail, Ben suddenly stopped and turned to Jacob. What if we found a way to make it work? I mean, what if I move, but we still keep in touch regularly? We could do video calls, visit each other, and stay involved in each other's lives. Jacob considered this, hopeful yet realistic. That sounds great, but it's not the same. Being physically apart can strain a friendship. We've seen that happen before. I know, but we can't let fear dictate our lives, Ben insisted, a spark of determination in his eyes. If we truly care about each other, we'll make it work. No tests, just trust. Jacob nodded, feeling the truth of Ben's words sink in. You're right. I can't let my insecurities cloud your opportunities. If you feel like this is what you need, then I support you. As the time to make a decision approached, Ben reflected on everything that had happened over the last few weeks. The trials they had faced together had only strengthened his resolve. He realized that his friendship with Jacob was worth its weight in gold. On the eve of his final decision, he sat down with a pen and paper, weighing his options. He considered the pros and cons of the job, the new city, and what life would look like away from the comfort of home. But at the heart of it all was Jacob's unwavering support, a reminder of the bond they shared. When morning came, Ben felt a sense of clarity wash over him. He knew what he had to do. He picked up his phone and dialed Jacob. Hey, can we meet? I have something important to tell you. Of course. Where do you want to meet? Jacob replied, enthusiasm filling his voice. Let's meet at our old spot by the lake, Ben suggested. Sitting by the serene lake, surrounded by nature's beauty, Ben felt a sense of peace. Jacob arrived shortly after, excitement radiating from him. This place brings back so many memories, doesn't it? Yeah, it does, Ben said, a hint of nostalgia in his voice. But I think it's time for new memories. Jacob looked at him, anticipation building. What do you mean? Ben took a deep breath. I've made my decision. I'm going to take the job. I need this for myself, for my career. But I want to promise you that I won't let our friendship falter. I'll make sure to visit, and we'll stay connected. Jacob's face lit up with a mix of relief and happiness. I'm proud of you, Ben. This is a huge step, and I'm here for you, no matter what. They both felt a weight lift as they embraced, the bond of their friendship solidified in that moment. They could face anything as long as they had each other. As Ben prepared for his move, he and Jacob spent every moment they could together. They explored their favorite haunts, reminisced about their adventures, and filled their days with laughter, knowing that this chapter was coming to a close. On the day of Ben's departure, they stood outside his packed car, the air thick with mixed emotions. I'll miss you, man, Jacob said, trying to keep his voice steady. I'll miss you too, Jake. But this isn't goodbye. It's just a new beginning for both of us, Ben replied, determination shining in his eyes. Promise you'll call me as soon as you arrive, Jacob urged. Promise, Ben assured him, and with one last hug he climbed into his car and drove away, leaving Jacob standing there, heart full of pride and a hint of sadness. Months later, Ben settled into his new life, thriving in his job and making new friends. But he and Jacob remained as close as ever, with regular calls and visits. Their friendship had endured the ultimate test and emerged stronger, proving that true connections could withstand distance and time. Jacob often thought back to the difficult conversations they had navigated, realizing that those moments had transformed their friendship into something beautiful. The trust they rebuilt was now an unshakable foundation, and he knew that no matter where life took them, they would always find their way back to each other. As he stared at the sunset one evening, Jacob felt a sense of contentment. He had learned the importance of trust, honesty, and the value of true friendship, and he knew that their bond would last a lifetime.